Hello, my lovelies. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different on this channel. I used to do on my social media quite a bit back in the day, and I want to bring it back because not only am I a pro wrestling fan, I am a horror movie buff, and I collect VHS. Yes, I do. Now that we're in October, we are in sweater weather and spooky season. I kind of want to go through some of my favorite VHS and spooky movies that I love the most. So I'll be making a few of these videos, and you know what? I'll probably continue throughout the year because in my world, every day is Halloween. Today I'm going to be doing my personal favorite subgenre from horror, and that is thriller, psychological, a little less gore, a little more mind effy. So the first movie that I want to talk about that is a classic, love this movie because it gives me the heebie-jeebies every single time I watch it, is the 1991 psychological thriller Silence of the Lambs. So if you're a little bit younger or you just got into horror movies, this is a movie that you absolutely need to see. It's iconic and it really paved the way for a lot of scary movies, horror movies today. This movie is starring Jodie Foster. She's a young FBI agent by the name of Clarice, but she's hunting a serial killer by the name of Buffalo Bill. She seeks the help from an imprisoned man named Dr. Hannibal Lecter. He was a psychiatrist and serial killer. So if you want to find a serial killer, who better to ask than another serial killer? So this is based on her going to visit Dr. Hannibal Lecter in solitary confinement to ask how she can find Buffalo Bill. And that's kind of where this movie really gets started, and her just looking for Buffalo Bill. So if you have not seen this one, you should definitely go watch it. So it came out in 1991 and it grossed $272 million when it came out with a $19 million budget. This movie is insane. I absolutely love it. The atmosphere, the feeling throughout this movie, it really feels like you're there and it brings you into it. A must watch for all horror movie fans or people starting to watch horror movies. Now, the next movie I want to talk about is a movie that always comes up when they ask me what my favorite horror movie is. Now, asking a horror fan what their favorite horror movie is one of the most difficult questions because today we are talking more about psychological. There are so many subgenres, comedy, gore, and thriller, and the list goes on. So it's really hard to answer that question, but every single time I do bring this movie up because it is not your typical horror movie. It's more based on you, your feeling, more your imagination, I would say. There is no jump scares in this movie. There's no real gore in this movie. Until the very end, you really have no idea what's going on. But this movie I'm talking about, a 1968 psychological, that is Rosemary's Baby, directed by Roman Polanski. He has his own issues. And like I said, this movie, you really have to dig into your imagination for this. It's based solely in like paranoia and womanhood and Christianity. It also has a lot to do with Guy being the husband and Rosemary. And you really, Guy, her husband, isn't a very likable person. Rosemary and him move into an apartment and they have meddling neighbors that are really involved in her life, and then her wanting to get pregnant as well. And then when she falls pregnant, get very involved in that as well. There's a whole reason for that. You really have to watch this movie, but it's really about Rosemary and her paranoia surrounding these neighbors that are meddling into her life, and his career as an actor, her kind of feeling alone in this pregnancy that her husband wanted. So you really don't know what is fact, what is fiction, what she's kind of making up in her own mind until you get to the very end. Since the release of Rosemary's Baby in the 60s, this movie has won a bunch of awards. It's been nominated for a bunch of awards, and since its release, it has been regarded as one of the best horror movies of all time, grossing $30 million. I'm not giving you any spoilers. I'm just giving you the bare minimum of these movies, hopefully getting you excited to get into them. But Rosemary's Baby, it's a ride. Now we're heading back to the 90s. Again, one of my favorite horror movies, psychological thrillers from the 90s. And this movie was based on a Stephen King novel. And a little backstory on me, my mom was a huge Stephen King fan. And that's how I really got into horror movies, was through my mom and through Stephen King. The first Stephen King book I ever read was Needful Things, and I was way too young to be reading that stuff. But I digress. Thanks, Mom, because I turned out relatively normal. 1990 psychological thriller, and what movie I'm talking about today is Misery. This is brilliantly done. For 99.9% of this movie, there's only two people in it. That is James Caan and Kathy Bates. These two are such magnificent actors and actresses. This movie is based on a novelist, that is James Caan. He's playing Paul Sheldon, and then Kathy Bates. Oh my God, this woman. Kathy Bates is playing the character Annie Wilkes, and she just does such a good job. And like I said, it's basically the two people in this movie. He is a huge fan of the author Paul Sheldon, also a nurse. And on his way up, Paul Sheldon does get in an accident. He's on his way to write a new book. And like a lot of authors, he writes it in a cabin away from people to get his, artistic juices flowing. But on his way, he does get into a car accident. And Annie, the very nice lady that she is, sees him. She's a huge fan, brings him home, and nurses him back to health. Sounds like a nice story, doesn't it? Well, it does take a dark turn. This is a psychological thriller. These two played off of each other brilliantly. At the 63rd Academy Awards, Kathy Bates did win Best Actress for this movie, as she should have. That makes this the only Stephen King movie to win some type of Oscar. And Stephen King himself has said that Misery is in his top 10 favorite film adaptations, which coming from him is a high honor. He usually hates the movies that are made out of his books. I mean, he doesn't usually have nice things to say, but Stephen King himself loves it. Stamp of approval. Psychological thriller, year 2000, we are going to be talking about again. This is just a list of my favorite movies. This is American Psycho. This movie is a little bit of a mix of like black comedy and horror. And there's a little bit of satire in there when it comes to consumerism and, kind of the upper class and how one-dimensional they can be. Kind of like the things you own end up owning you. And I really like this movie because it goes to show not everybody that looks like they have everything from the outside has everything on the inside. And kind of like Rosemary's Baby, you don't really know what's going on in this movie. You don't really even know at the end. It's based on like paranoia and hysteria and kind of losing touch with yourself and reality and putting all of your focus on material things instead of really working on yourself. Besides, of course, Patrick Bateman working on himself on the outside, hearing a little bit more about his business cards than his soon-to-be wife. I really don't know what's going on, and that's why I love this movie so much. There's so many layers to it for somebody that's supposed to be so one-dimensional, like Patrick Bateman, to the outside world. So this movie got a lot of praise, grossed over $34 million on a $7 million budget, literally has become a meme. There are so many memes out there of Patrick Bateman and his business cards and him flexing in the mirror. This movie is funny, it's scary, it makes you really think about yourself and what you consume and what you prioritize in your life as a human being. So just, if you haven't seen this movie, again, please go watch it, or go look at the memes. Those are good too. Now we are going back to my favorite decade, and that is 90s, 1995. We got a crime thriller. Now this is my favorite subgenre in a subgenre? I don't even know anymore. Do you like subgenres? I got a subgenre for you. This is a David Fincher movie starring Brad Pitt, starring Morgan Freeman, and that is Seven. Another one of my all-time faves. This is my all-time faves list. When I talk about some of my favorite movies that we are going down the list right now, this is not one that people have seen as much as the others. And in my opinion, out of all of these movies that I'm talking about today, this is the one you need to see the most. This movie is based on two police detectives, William Somerset, and he is 1 week away from retiring, and that is Morgan Freeman. And he is paired up with David Mills, that's Brad Pitt, kind of a very young, hot-headed police officer coming in to work the ground with him. First murder scene that they walk into, there is gluttony written on the wall, and there is a slightly larger man, and he had expired. When Morgan Freeman sees this, he's like, this is a hot boo-boo mess. I'm supposed to retire in a week. Like, I'm not taking this. We're gonna have to assign somebody else with the young detective. But they say, nay, nay, sir, nay, nay. You are gonna be working this case no matter how long it takes, which like is kind of effed up, you know, like he's been working life. Let the man retire. Go through all these scenes. We got gluttony, we got greed, we got lust. You see where I'm going with this? Seven deadly sins. If you have seen this movie, I will put in there that Brad Pitt, the younger detective, he does have a wife. And we'll just leave it at that. This movie, just based on the 7 deadly sins and these two cops trying to work together, one of them just wants to go home. He just wants to retire. It is such a terrifying movie for a crime thriller. This one, the first time that I seen it, I think I was like 14, something like that. Again, too young. Mom, what were you doing? This movie, I don't want to say it's beautifully done because, you know, it's the 7 deadly sins. People are losing their lives. I don't want to say it's beautiful, but you know what I mean? It's artistic in how they put this movie together. With the 7 deadly sins, which is a Christian concept, this movie earned $327 million. At the end of this movie, there is a twist, and it has been called the best in cinematic history. The shots, the atmosphere, it is such a good movie. It is one of my all-time actual, you know, my top 3. Last movie I'm going to talk about today, I don't even know if I would call this a horror movie, but I'm gonna lump it in here because these movies that I have went through today are in my top 10 of all time. Every single one of these movies. This next one, again, I don't know if I would classify it as horror, but I had to put it in there. It is a crime film, and it is called Natural Born Killers, and we're going back to the 90s with this one, 1994. Let me just talk about this movie for a second. There are so many emotions in this movie. A story by Quentin Tarantino, so you already know it's gonna be a little messed up. Got Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis as the 2 main characters. Do kind of go into Mallory's backstory with her abusive father, if I can, I don't know if I can say that word, sexual abusive father, her neglectful mother, and her childhood and how she grew up. It really makes you feel something for this woman. I remember one of the first times I ever watched this movie crying, watching Mickey come to Mallory's home. Mickey was a delivery guy and swung by her house to deliver something, and he could see kind of the dysfunction in the household and did take her out of the home. Very sticky situation when it comes to how dysfunction, mental health, and trauma can kind of turn you into the person you're not supposed to be. And also her meeting Mickey, wrong person at the wrong time, really shaped her life going forward in this movie. They did, Mickey and Mallory, have a ceremony wedding on a bridge, and you kind of feel maybe a trauma bond between these two or real love between these two, but you really start to almost sympathize with these people, even though they've done some terrible things in this movie, like holding people hostage. Also see Mallory having flashbacks of her childhood with her father in this movie, and you just feel so apathetic to her and this man that Mickey trying to help her, but in all the wrong ways, in all the absolute wrong ways. Sometimes just seeing a psychologist might be better than going on a Bonnie and Clyde type spree. So many emotions, and then they also get into the whole fandom with serial killers and people watching this story through the news and having sympathy for them as well. So you're just one of those people. It is a really intense movie, and you feel anger and sadness. You feel every single emotion, and I even have goose pimples just talking about it right now. So if this isn't a movie that you've seen, definitely before you watch it, make sure you are in the right mental headspace, because this is one of those movies that made me feel every single sort of way, and it's hard to shake it even days after you watch it. So that is what I have for today. I will be coming back in the next few days with another video talking about more VHS that I enjoy for spooky season. I'm super excited. Next time, let me know below if you want me to do another subgenre, if you want me to pick some more faves, what you would like me to do on theme next time. I am so excited. I love October so much. It's spooky season, but it's also sweater weather. I just want candy. So I'll see ya next time.